Welcome back. I am Pemberton, and this is Book 7, Part 4, the close of the book, and the end of David. We gather up the last troubles of the reign of fresh revolt under Sheva, swiftly put down a 3-year famine, traced back to an old wrong done to the Gibeonites, and then a strange, sobering story of the census, David's pride in numbering his fighting men, and the plague that follows, until he sees the destroying angel staying its hand over Jerusalem, at the threshing floor of Araunah, where the temple will one day stand. And that brings us to David's last and best work. Forbidden to build the house of God himself because his hands had shed so much blood, the old king instead pours out his treasure, his plans, and his heart in preparing every detail of it for his son, and gives Solomon his final charge before he dies. Let us finish Book 7.
After this, when the country was suffering severely from famine, David begged God to have mercy on the people, and to reveal to him what had caused it, and how a cure might be found for that trouble. The prophets answered that God wanted vengeance taken for the Gibeonites, whom King Saul had wickedly betrayed to slaughter, failing to keep the oath that Joshua the general and the Senate had sworn to them. God said that if the king would allow the Gibeonites to take whatever vengeance they desired for those who had been killed, he would be reconciled to them, and would free the multitude from their miseries. As soon as David understood that this was what God required, he sent for the Gibeonites and asked them what they wanted. They asked that 7 sons of Saul be handed over to them for punishment. David delivered them up, but he spared Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan. When the Gibeonites received the men, they punished them as they wished. After this, God began to send rain. He restored the earth so it would bring forth its fruits as usual, freed it from the previous drought, and the country of the Hebrews flourished again. A little later, the king made war against the Philistines. After he joined battle with them and put them to flight, he was left alone while pursuing them. When he was completely worn out, one of the enemies saw him. This man was named Achmon, the son of Araph, and he was one of the sons of the giants. He had a spear whose handle weighed 300 shekels, and he wore a breastplate of chain work and carried a sword. Seeing that David, the enemy king, was exhausted from labor, Achmon turned back and rushed violently at him to kill him. But Abishai, Joab's brother, suddenly appeared, protected the king with his shield as David lay down, and killed the enemy. The people were deeply troubled by the danger the king had faced, and by how close he had come to being killed. The rulers made David swear that he would no longer go out with them to battle, lest by his courage and boldness he suffer some great misfortune and deprive the people of the benefits they now enjoyed through him, and of those they might later enjoy if he lived a long time among them. When the king heard that the Philistines had gathered at the city Gezerah, he sent an army against them. Sibbechai the Hittite, one of David's most courageous men, distinguished himself in a way that deserved great praise. He killed many of those who boasted that they were descendants of the giants and proudly gloried in that claim, and by doing so he brought victory to the Hebrews. After this defeat, the Philistines made war again. David sent an army against them, and Nephan, his kinsman, fought in single combat with the strongest of all the Philistines, killed him, and put the rest to flight. Many of them were also slain in the battle. A little while after this, the Philistines set up their camp at a city not far from the borders of the Hebrews' country. Among them was a man 6 cubits tall, who had 1 more toe on each foot and 1 more finger on each hand than men naturally have. David sent Jonathan, the son of Shimea, from his army against them. Jonathan fought this man in single combat and killed him. Because he turned the battle, he gained the greatest reputation for courage in it. This man, too, had boasted that he was one of the sons of the giants. After this fight, the Philistines made war no more against the Israelites. Now that David was free from wars and dangers and enjoyed deep peace for the future, he composed songs and hymns to God in several kinds of meter. Some of those he made were trimeters, and some were pentameters. He also made musical instruments and taught the Levites to sing hymns to God both on the day called the Sabbath and on other festivals. The instruments were made in this way. The viol was an instrument with 10 strings and was played with a bow. The psaltery had 12 musical notes and was played with the fingers. And the cymbals were broad, large instruments made of brass. This much about these instruments is enough, so that readers will not be entirely unfamiliar with their nature. All the men who served around David were men of courage. The most illustrious and famous among them for their deeds numbered 38. Of these I will describe the exploits of only 5, because they are enough to show the virtue of the others as well, for these men were powerful enough to subdue countries and conquer great nations. The first was Jesse, the son of Achimas, who often leaped into the enemy's ranks and did not stop fighting until he had overthrown 900 of them. After him was Eleazar, the son of Dodo, who was with the king at Arasim. Once, when the Israelites were thrown into fear by the great number of the Philistines and were running away, Eleazar stood alone, attacked the enemy, and killed many of them. He fought until his sword clung to his hand because of the blood he had shed. When the Israelites saw that the Philistines were retreating because of him, they came down from the mountains and pursued them. At that time they won a surprising and famous victory. Eleazar killed the men, and the multitude followed after and stripped the bodies of the dead. The third was Sheba, the son of Ilis. In the wars against the Philistines, when they set up their camp at a place called Lehi, the Hebrews again became afraid of their army, and would not stand their ground. But Sheba stood still alone, as if he were an army and a whole body of men. Some of the enemy he struck down, and others who could not withstand his strength and force he pursued. These are the deeds of hand-to-hand fighting performed by these three. At one time, when the king was at Jerusalem, and the army of the Philistines came against him to fight, David went up to the top of the citadel, as we have already said, to inquire of God about the battle. The enemy's camp lay in the valley that reaches to the city Bethlehem, which is 20 furlongs from Jerusalem. David said to his companions that there was excellent water in his own city, especially in the pit near the gate, and he wondered whether anyone would bring him some to drink. He said he would rather have that water than a great deal of money. When the 3 men heard what David said, they immediately ran off, broke through the middle of the enemy camp, and came to Bethlehem. After drawing the water, they returned through the enemy camp to the king. The Philistines were so astonished by their boldness and quickness that they stayed quiet and did nothing against them, as if they despised their small number. But when the water was brought to the king, he would not drink it. He said it had been brought at the risk and blood of men, and for that reason it was not right to drink it. Instead, he poured it out to God and thanked him for saving the men. Next after these was Abishai, Joab's brother, who killed 600 men in one day. The 5th of them was Benaiah, who by lineage was a priest. When 2 famous men in the country of Moab challenged him, he overcame them by his courage. Also there was an Egyptian by nation, a man of immense size, who challenged him, yet Benaiah, though unarmed, killed him with a man's own spear. He seized the Egyptian by force, took away his weapons while the man was still alive and fighting, and killed him with those same weapons. One may also add another deed of the same man to those already mentioned, either as the greatest example of his quick courage, or as one like the rest. When God sent snow, a lion slipped and fell into a certain pit. Because the mouth of the pit was narrow, it was clear that the lion would perish, shut in by the snow. Seeing no way to get out and save himself, the lion roared. When Benaiah heard the wild beast, he went toward him. Following the sound the lion made, he went down into the mouth of the pit and struck the struggling animal with a stake that lay there, killing him immediately. The other 33 men were also like these in valor. King David wanted to know how many tens of thousands of people there were, but he forgot the commands of Moses, who had warned beforehand that if the multitude was counted, each person should pay half a shekel to God. So the king commanded Joab, the captain of his army, to go and count the whole multitude. Joab said there was no need for such a numbering, but David was not persuaded to cancel it. Instead, he ordered Joab not to delay, but to begin numbering the Hebrews at once. Joab took the heads of the tribes and the scribes with him, traveled through the country of the Israelites, recorded how many people there were, and returned to the king at Jerusalem after 9 months and 20 days. He gave the king the number of the people, excluding the tribe of Benjamin, because he had not yet counted the tribe, and also excluding the tribe of Levi, because the king had repented of sinning against God. The number of the rest of the Israelites was 900,000 men who were able to bear arms and go to war. The tribe of Judah alone numbered 400,000 men. When the prophets made known to David that God was angry with him, David began to plead with God, asking him to be merciful and forgive his sin. But God sent Nathan the prophet to him and told him to choose between 3 things, so that he might select whichever he preferred, whether famine should come upon the country for 7 years, whether there should be war, and he should be subdued by his enemies for 3 months, or whether God should send a pestilence and disease upon the Hebrews for 3 days. David had fallen into a deadly choice among great miseries, and he was troubled and deeply confused. The prophet told him that he had to choose, and ordered him to answer quickly so that he could report David's choice to God. The king reasoned with himself that if he asked for famine, it would seem that he was choosing something dangerous to others but not to himself, since he had a great store of grain laid up, while others would suffer harm. If he chose to be conquered by enemies for 3 months, it would seem he had chosen war because he had brave men around him and strong fortresses, and therefore did not fear that option. So he chose the affliction that was common to kings and subjects alike, and in which the fear was equal on every side. He said beforehand that it was much better to fall into the hands of God than into the hands of his enemies. When the prophet heard this, he reported it to God. God then sent a pestilence and mortality upon the Hebrews. They did not all die in the same way, nor in a way that made it easy to identify the disease. The miserable sickness was one disease, but it carried people off through 10,000 causes and occasions that those who suffered could not understand. One person died upon the neck of another. The terrible malady seized people before they were aware of it, and brought them suddenly to their end. Some gave up the ghost immediately, in very great pain and bitter grief. Others were wasted away by their disease until nothing remained to be buried, and as soon as they fell they were completely consumed. Some were choked and greatly lamented their condition, being struck also with sudden darkness. Some, while burying a relative, fell down dead before finishing the funeral rites. 70,000 perished from this disease, which began in the morning and lasted until the hour of dinner. The angel even stretched out his hand over Jerusalem, as though sending this terrible judgment upon it. David had put on sackcloth and lay on the ground, entreating God and begging that the disease might now cease, and that God would be satisfied with those who had already perished. When the king looked up into the air and saw the angel moving through it toward Jerusalem with his sword drawn, he spoke to God. "I am the shepherd, and I may justly be punished. that the sheep should be preserved, for they have not sinned at all. Send your wrath on me and on all my family, but spare the people." When God heard David's supplication, he caused the pestilence to stop. He sent Gad the prophet to him and commanded him to go up at once to the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite, build an altar there to God, and offer sacrifices. When David heard this, he did not neglect his duty, but hurried to the place appointed for him. Araunah was threshing wheat. When he saw the king and all his servants coming toward him, he ran forward, came to David, and worshipped him. Araunah was by lineage a Jebusite, but he was a special friend of David's. For that reason, when David overthrew the city, he had done Araunah no harm, as we have told the reader a little earlier. Araunah asked why his lord had come to his servant. David answered that he had come to buy the threshing floor from him, so that he might build an altar to God there and offer a sacrifice. Araunah replied that he freely gave him both the threshing floor and the plows and the oxen for a burnt offering, and he prayed that God would graciously accept David's sacrifice. "I loudly acknowledge your generosity and greatness of soul, and I accept your goodwill. But I want you to take the price of them all, because it is not right to offer a sacrifice that costs nothing." When Araunah said that David could do as he pleased, David bought the threshing floor from him for 50 shekels. After he had built an altar, he performed divine service, brought a burnt offering, and also offered peace offerings. By these offerings God was appeased, and became gracious to them again. It happened that Abraham had come to that very place and offered his son Isaac as a burnt offering. When the youth was ready to have his throat cut, a ram suddenly appeared, standing by the altar, and Abraham sacrificed it instead of his son, as we have related before. When King David saw that God had heard his prayer and had graciously accepted his sacrifice, he resolved to call that entire place the altar of all the people, and to build a temple to God there. These words fit exactly what was later to happen, for God sent the prophet to him and told him that his son, the one who would take the kingdom after him, would build him an altar there. After this prophecy was delivered, the king ordered the strangers to be counted, and they were found to number 180,000. From these he appointed 80,000 to cut stone, and the rest of the multitude to carry the stones. Over the workmen he set 3,500 overseers. He also prepared a great quantity of iron and brass for the work, along with many cedar trees, and those exceedingly large. The Tyrians and Sidonians sent these trees to him, because he had asked them to supply them. David told his friends that these things were now being prepared so that he could leave materials ready for the building of the temple to his son, who was to reign after him. In this way, his son would not have to search for them later, when he was very young and, because of his age, inexperienced in such matters. Instead, the materials would already be lying ready for him, and he would be able to complete the work more easily. So David called his son Solomon and charged him, when he had received the kingdom, to build a temple to God. David told him that he himself had wanted to build a temple for God, but God had forbidden him, because he was polluted with blood and wars. God had foretold that Solomon, David's youngest son, would build him a temple, and would be called by that name. God had also promised to care for Solomon as a father cares for his son. He had promised to make the country of the Hebrews happy under him, not only in other respects, but especially by giving it peace and freedom from wars and from internal rebellions, which are the greatest of all blessings. Since Solomon had been appointed king by God himself before he was born, David urged him to make himself worthy of God's providence in every way, and especially by being religious, righteous, and courageous. He told Solomon to keep God's commands and laws, which God had given them through Moses, and not to allow others to break them. Be zealous also to dedicate to God the temple that he has chosen to be built during your reign. Do not be frightened by the greatness of the work, and do not begin it timidly, for I will make everything ready before I die. Notice that 10,000 talents of gold and 100,000 talents of silver have already been gathered together. I have also laid up brass and iron beyond counting, and an immense quantity of timber and stone. Besides this, you have many tens of thousands of stone cutters and carpenters. If you need anything more, add something of your own. Therefore, if you complete this work, you will be acceptable to God and will have him as your protector. David also further exhorted the rulers of the people to assist his son in this building, and to attend to the divine service once they were free from all their misfortunes. By doing this, he said, they would enjoy peace and a happy settlement in place of their troubles, blessings with which God rewards people who are religious and righteous. He also ordered that when the temple had been built, they should put the ark and the holy vessels inside it. He assured them that they should have had a temple long before, if their fathers had not been negligent of God's commands. God had charged them that when they gained possession of this land, they should build him a temple. In this way David spoke to the governors and to his son. David was now advanced in years, and because of his age his body had become cold and numb, so that he could not get warm even by covering himself with many clothes. When the physicians gathered, they agreed on this advice. A beautiful virgin should be chosen from the whole country to sleep beside the king, and this young woman would give him warmth and serve as a remedy against his numbness. A woman was found in the city whose beauty was superior to that of all other women. Her name was Abishag. She slept with the king, but did no more than give him warmth, because he was so old that he could not know her as a husband knows his wife. We will speak about this woman again shortly. Now David's fourth son was a handsome and tall young man, born to him by his wife Haggith. His name was Adonijah. In character he was like Absalom, and he exalted himself, hoping to become king. He told his friends that he ought to take the government upon himself. He also prepared many chariots and horses, and 50 men to run before him. When his father saw this, he did not rebuke him or restrain him from his purpose, nor did he even ask why he was doing it. Adonijah had as his supporters Joab, the captain of the army, and Abiathar the high priest. The only people who opposed him were Zadok the high priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah the captain of the guards, Shimei David's friend, and all the other most mighty men. Adonijah prepared a supper outside the city, near the fountain in the king's paradise. He invited all his brothers, except Solomon, and took with him Joab the captain of the army, Abiathar, and the rulers of the tribe of Judah. But he did not invite Zadok the high priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah the captain of the guards, or any of those who belonged to the opposing party. Nathan the prophet told Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, about this, saying that Adonijah had become king, and that David knew nothing of it. He advised her to save herself and her son Solomon by going alone to David and telling him that he had sworn Solomon would reign after him, while Adonijah had already taken the kingdom. Nathan said that he himself would come in after her, and after she had spoken to the king, he would confirm what she had said. Bathsheba agreed with Nathan and went in to the king. She worshipped him, and when she had asked permission to speak, she told him everything in the way Nathan had suggested. She described the supper Adonijah had made and named those he had invited, Abiathar, Joab the general, and David's sons, except Solomon and David's close friends. She also said that all the people had their eyes on David, waiting to know whom he would choose as their king. She asked him to consider how, after his death, Adonijah, if he became king, would kill both her and her son Solomon. While Bathsheba was speaking, the keeper of the king's chambers told David that Nathan wished to see him. When the king ordered that Nathan be admitted, Nathan came in and asked whether David had appointed Adonijah king and delivered the government to him. He said Adonijah had made a splendid supper and invited all David's sons except Solomon, and had also invited Joab, the captain of the army, and Abiathar the high priest. They were feasting with applause and many joyful sounds of instruments, and wishing that Adonijah's kingdom might last forever. But Adonijah had not invited Nathan, Zadok the high priest, or Benaiah the captain of the guards. Nathan said it was only right for everyone to know whether this had been done with David's approval or not. After Nathan said this, the king commanded that Bathsheba be called back to him, because she had gone out of the room when the prophet entered. When Bathsheba came, David swore by Almighty God that her son Solomon would certainly be king, just as he had sworn before. Solomon would sit on his throne, and he would do so that very day. Bathsheba worshipped him and wished him a long life. The king then sent for Zadok the high priest and Benaiah the captain of the guards. When they arrived, he ordered them to take Nathan the prophet with them, along with all the armed men around the palace. They were to set his son Solomon on the king's mule and take him out of the city to the fountain called Gihon. There Zadok the high priest and Nathan the prophet were to anoint him with the holy oil and make him king. David commanded them to follow Solomon through the middle of the city, sound the trumpets, and cry aloud that King Solomon might sit on the royal throne forever, so that all the people would know he had been appointed king by his father. He also gave Solomon a charge about his government, to rule the whole nation of the Hebrews, and especially the tribe of Judah, religiously and righteously. After Benaiah prayed that God would be favorable to Solomon, they acted without delay. They set Solomon on the mule, brought him out of the city to the fountain, anointed him with oil, and brought him back into the city with acclamations and wishes that his kingdom might continue for a long time. When they brought him into the king's house, they set him on the throne. Then all the people gave themselves over to merrymaking and celebrated a festival, dancing and delighting themselves with musical pipes, until both the earth and the air echoed with the multitude of musical instruments. When Adonijah and his guests heard this noise, they were thrown into confusion. Joab, the captain of the army, said that he was not pleased with those echoes or with the sound of the trumpets. When supper was set before them, no one tasted it. They all became anxious and thoughtful, wondering what the matter could be. Then Jonathan, the son of Abiathar the high priest, came running to them. When Adonijah saw the young man, he received him gladly, and said that he was a good messenger. Jonathan then told them the whole matter concerning Solomon and the decision of King David. At this, Adonijah and all the guests rose hastily from the feast, and each one fled to his own home. Adonijah, fearing the king, because of what he had done, became a supplicant to God, and took hold of the projecting horns of the altar. Solomon was told that Adonijah had done this, and that he wanted Solomon to assure him that he would not remember the injury Adonijah had done or inflict any severe punishment for it. Solomon answered very mildly and prudently that he forgave him this offense. But he also said that if Adonijah were found attempting any new disturbances, he would be the cause of his own punishment. So Solomon sent men to him, and had him raised from the place where he had made supplication. When Adonijah came to the king and worshipped him, Solomon told him to go away to his own house and have no fear of harm. He also urged him to show himself a worthy man, since that would be to his own advantage. David, wishing to appoint his son king over all the people, called their rulers to Jerusalem, together with the priests and the Levites. First he counted the Levites and found that there were 38,000 of them, from 30 years old to 50. From these he appointed 20, 3,000 to oversee the building of the temple, 6,000 to be judges of the people and scribes, 4,000 to be porters for the house of God, and the same number to be singers, singing to the instruments David had prepared, as we have already said. He also divided them into courses. When he separated the priests from them, he found among the priests 24 courses, 16 from the house of Eleazar, and 8 from the house of Ithamar. He ordained that one course should minister to God for 8 days, from Sabbath to Sabbath. The courses were distributed by lot in the presence of David, Zadok and Abiathar the high priests, and all the rulers. The course that came up first was written down as the first, and then the second, and so on until the 24th. This division has remained to this day. David also divided the tribe of Levi into 24 parts, and when they cast lots, their courses came up in the same way for periods of 8 days. He also honored the descendants of Moses and made them keepers of the treasures of God and of the donations dedicated by the kings. He further ordained that the whole tribe of Levi, as well as the priests, should serve God night and day, as Moses had commanded them. After this, David divided the entire army into 12 parts, with their leaders, captains of hundreds and commanders. Each part had 24,000 men, ordered to attend on Solomon for 30 days at a time, from the first day to the last, along with the captains of thousands and captains of hundreds. He also set rulers over every part, choosing men he knew to be good and righteous. He appointed others to take charge of the treasures, the villages, the fields, and the animals, whose names I do not think it necessary to mention. When David had arranged all these officers in the manner described, he called together the rulers of the Hebrews, the heads of their tribes, the officers over the several divisions, and those appointed over every work and every possession. Standing on a high platform, he spoke to the multitude. My brothers and my people, I want you to know that I intended to build a house for God, and I prepared a large quantity of gold and 100,000 talents of silver. But God forbade me through the prophet Nathan, because of the wars I fought on your account, and because my right hand was polluted with the slaughter of our enemies. Instead, he commanded that my son, who is to succeed me in the kingdom, should build a temple for him. You know that among the 12 sons of our forefather Jacob, Judah was appointed to be king, and that I was preferred before my 6 brothers and received the government from God, while none of them were troubled by it. In the same way, I desire that my sons not stir up rebellion against one another now that Solomon has received the kingdom, but that they cheerfully accept him as their Lord, knowing that God has chosen him. It is not a hard thing to obey even a foreigner as ruler if that is God's will. Therefore it is fitting to rejoice when a brother has obtained that dignity, since the rest share in it with him. I pray that God's promises may be fulfilled, and that the happiness he has promised to bestow on King Solomon over the whole country may remain there for all time to come. And these promises, my son, will stand firm and come to a happy end if you show yourself to be a religious and righteous man, and an observer of the laws of your country. But if not, expect adversity because of your disobedience to them. When the king had said this, he stopped speaking. Then, in the sight of them all, he gave Solomon the description and pattern of the temple building, the foundations, the lower and upper chambers, how many there were to be, and their height and width. He also fixed the weight of the gold and silver vessels. Moreover, he earnestly stirred them up by his words to use the greatest eagerness in the work. He exhorted the rulers, and especially the tribe of Levi, to assist Solomon, both because Solomon was young and because God had chosen him to take care of building the temple and governing the kingdom. David also declared that the work would be easy and not very burdensome to them, because he had prepared many talents of gold, still more silver, timber, a great many carpenters and stone cutters, a large quantity of emeralds, and all kinds of precious stones. He said that even now he would give, from the proper goods of his own dominion, 200 talents and 300 other talents of pure gold for the most holy place, and for the chariot of God, the cherubim, which were to stand over and cover the ark. When David finished speaking, great eagerness appeared among the rulers, the priests, and the Levites. They contributed and made great and splendid promises for future contribution. They undertook to bring 5,000 talents of gold and 10,000 drams of gold, 10,000 talents of silver, and many tens of thousands of talents of iron. If anyone had a precious stone, he brought it and dedicated it to be placed among the treasures. Jachiel, one of the descendants of Moses, had charge of these treasures. On this occasion all the people rejoiced, and David especially rejoiced when he saw the zeal and eager ambition of the rulers, the priests, and all the rest. He began to bless God with a loud voice, calling him the Father and Parent of the universe, and the author of human and divine things. David said God had adorned Solomon as the patron and guardian of the Hebrew nation, of its happiness, and of the kingdom he had given to his son. Besides this, he prayed for happiness for all the people, and for his son Solomon he prayed for a sound and righteous mind, confirmed in every kind of virtue. Then he commanded the multitude to bless God. At this they all fell down on the ground and worshipped him. The people also gave thanks to David for all the blessings they had received since he had taken the kingdom. On the next day he presented sacrifices to God, 1,000 bullocks and the same number of lambs, which they offered as burnt offerings. They also offered offerings and slaughtered many tens of thousands of sacrifices. The king feasted all day with all the people. They anointed Solomon a second time with oil, and appointed him king, and they appointed Zadok to be high priest over the whole multitude. When they had brought Solomon to the royal palace and seated him on his father's throne, they were obedient to him from that day on. A little while later, David also fell ill because of his age. Realizing that he was near death, he called his son Solomon and spoke to him. "My son, I am now going to my grave and to my father's. This is the common road that all people who now exist, and all who will exist hereafter, must travel. From that road it is no longer possible to return or to know anything that is done in this world. For this reason, while I am still alive, though already very near death, I exhort you, just as I have advised you before, to be righteous toward your subjects and religious toward God, who has given you your kingdom. Observe his commands and his laws, which he sent to us through Moses. Do not, out of favor or flattery, allow any lust or any other passion to influence you into disregarding them. If you transgress his laws, you will lose the favor of God and will turn his providence away from you in all things. But if you conduct yourself as you ought, and as I urge you to do, you will preserve our kingdom for our family, and no other house will rule over the Hebrews except ours for all ages. Remember also the transgressions of Joab, the captain of the army. Out of envy he killed 2 generals, both righteous and good men, Abner the son of Ner, and Amasa the son of Jether. Avenge their deaths as seems good to you, since Joab has been too hard for me and more powerful than I have been, and so he has escaped punishment until now. I also entrust to you the son of Barzillai the Gileadite. To please me, hold him in great honor and take great care of him. We did not first do good to him. Rather, we are only repaying the debt we owe to his father for what he did for me during my flight. There is also Shimei the son of Gera, of the tribe of Benjamin. After he had cast many insults at me when I was fleeing to Mahanaim, he met me at Jordan and received assurances that he would suffer nothing at that time. Now you must look for some just occasion and punish him." After David had given these admonitions to his son about public affairs, about his friends, and about those he knew deserved punishment, he died. He had lived 70 years. He had reigned 7 years and 6 months in Hebron over the tribe of Judah, and 33 years in Jerusalem over the whole country. David was a man of excellent character, and was endowed with all the virtues desirable in a king, especially in one entrusted with preserving so many tribes. He was extraordinarily brave, and when he had to fight for his subjects, he readily went into danger before everyone else. He stirred the soldiers to action by his own labors, and by fighting for them, not by commanding them in a despotic way. David also had very great ability in understanding, and in grasping both present and future circumstances, whenever he had to manage affairs. He was prudent, moderate, and kind to those suffering under calamities. He was righteous and humane, qualities especially fitting for kings. In the exercise of such great authority, he was not guilty of any offense except in the matter of the wife of Uriah. He also left behind greater wealth than any other king ever did, whether among the Hebrews or among other nations. His son Solomon buried him in Jerusalem with great magnificence, and with all the other funeral pomp customary for kings. David also had great and immense wealth buried with him, and its vastness can be easily judged from what I will now say. 1,300 years later, Hyrcanus the high priest was besieged by Antiochus, called the Pious, the son of Demetrius. Hyrcanus wanted to give him money so that he would raise the siege and withdraw his army. Since he had no other way to get the money, he opened one room of David's sepulchre, took out 3,000 talents, and gave part of that sum to Antiochus. By this means he caused the siege to be lifted, as we have told the reader elsewhere. After Hyrcanus, and many years later, King Herod opened another room and took away a great deal of money. Yet neither Hyrcanus nor Herod reached the coffins of the kings themselves, because their bodies were buried under the earth with such skill that they did not appear even to those who entered their monuments. This is enough for us to have said about these matters.
And the book 7 ends, with David dead full of years, the kingdom at its height, the treasure and the plans for the temple laid up, and the young Solomon on the throne with his father's last words ringing in his ears. The shepherd, the giant killer, the fugitive, the king, the sinner, the mourner, all of it is finished, and what he could not build, his son now will. The reign of Solomon, the building of the temple, and the glory and the folly of the wisest of kings is where book 8 begins. Thank you for sitting with the whole of book 7, from the throne at Hebron to the grave of David. Mind the footnotes, and beware the folly.